All abilities are now individually tuned, and PvP will never be the same. I'm joined with our local 4-point-something KD Trials speedrunner, Neon Synths.
Hola.
Our favorite crustacean, a bit more casual PvP player. I'm sure he's not going to be a big fan of me saying that. Cranky Crab.
Oh, thank you so much.
We are not going to be just doing a straight read through of the TWAB because literally every other major channel has already done that, but rather we're going to try to analyze the information we've been given to hopefully better prepare and predict the effects that these changes will have for you in the sandbox, and some things you can look forward to this December to help you get ahead of the curve a little bit. Hopefully, with a conflict of ideas of each of us here, and each of us having formulated our own opinions beforehand, we can better synthesize a more accurate representation of your voice and how you will be affected. Timestamps are in the description. Let's get rolling. Let's try to keep this under 20 minutes, huh? Let me ask you two something. Because we're starting to see a diversity, we're starting to see a spread between abilities that come up quickly, what I'm going to call utility damage, right? Like the firebolt grenades. These are abilities that are meant to be easy to acquire, but aren't super impactful. They're not going to be very game changing. And then we have what I'm going to call the spike abilities that are meant to be very powerful, but only for a short period of time. Predictions, lay them out on the line here. Of the two, which do you think is going to be more prevalent in the metagame going into PvP? Because obviously flux grenades are going to be something really powerful, and we're going to talk about some things that I think hopefully Bungie will address coming with the armor TWAB, because armor and abilities are they're intertwined. Like that is their whole shtick, right? And I'm worried about a couple different ways that players might be able to get around some of these cooldowns and such, right? To make like a flux grenade come up with only 30 seconds as opposed to 3 minutes. But I'm wondering if you two have any predictions as to whether frequency or like quality versus quantity, right? Like which do you think is going to be the sweet spot for most players?
I think the spike abilities, like you were saying, are going to be the meta.
You think so?
Just because Destiny is such a build crafty game, you're always going to have people abusing abilities. That's just the name of the game, unfortunately for the Crucible. And so people are going to find a way to have a flux grenade in every minute.
I've got a way right now. I'm letting you know right now. I've got an idea for how to get one up.
Exactly. So it's like they're going to find a way, and that's going to become the meta. And the utility ones are cool because you're going to have them more often, but like you said, they're less impactful. So in the really competitive stuff, it's really you're not going to see it a lot. You need that one-hit kill. You need that quick, okay, one person's down, now it's 3v2.
You and I had that conversation recently about some crafting for Nightfalls. And you'd made the comment, you said, well, pretty much in any game like this, damage is king. Like, we all love having consistency perks. We like things like killing wind and so forth, but kill clip is just always going to be kill clip. It just is.
It's just going to be so hard to beat that.
I don't know that there's any. I don't even know that we need to change that. I think that has its place for sure. I think that the other things keep the game interesting because there's variety, and I don't know that you'll ever. I don't know how you can make things powerful and also make them too equal. I think you're better off just having interesting variety. Supers
in general are now going to be based around dealing and taking damage. This is actually an idea from Overwatch where, you obviously will passively regenerate super, which is what this has here, but giving and taking damage are now going to build that much better, which means, everybody, that tanking just became a play style. Like that just became a cemented play style. And if you can't hear the sound of Sweet Business spinning up with Icefall Mantles with Whisper of Chains in the background, then you should be scared because the ability for certain classes specifically, think Stag Warlocks, right? To be able to tank big portions of damage. I wonder if builds are going to start being built around willingly accepting more damage, or if we're going to see things like that aren't really getting used that much, such as the Mask of the Quiet one, which is kind of trash in PvP, might actually start to see some usage because it's just inherently synergistic with getting your super up.
Yeah, I think I need to know more about what's going to happen. I know they said they want us to get our super primarily from using our primary weapons.
Yeah.
But receiving damage, I think we need to know what that's actually going to look like first.
Okay, fair enough. So this is a big one here. This is one that I'm particularly a bit scared of because I fear Bungie doesn't quite understand how the metagame works sometimes. Supers are now going to have individual regenerations. They're going to have, each of them is going to have their own thing. The slowest of the list is being Spectral Blades, Fist of Havoc, Hammer of Soul, Glacial Quake, and Winter's Wrath, which in my opinion is fair. Those are all pretty powerful. And then at the top of the list, the fastest cooldown is going to be Well of Radiance. Now, if any longtime fans has seen our tier list video on the Well of Radiance, it is an incredibly good super that's just a little hard to understand. But with this now being, well is now going to be passively the fastest thing, I really feel like, guys, I mentioned Overwatch earlier, I really feel like we're going to have 2 tanks, 2 support, 2 DPS, because the people who are running Well of Radiance are going to get their super far quicker than everybody else by default, and they're going to generate 3 Orbs of Light by default just by slamming their super down. Well of Radiance, even with the nerfs that are coming to its ability regen, just became absolutely insane, and arguably a top tier for 6s, maybe even 3s at this point, because of how quickly you're going to be able to speed super energy to the rest. We didn't see any mention, by the way, we didn't see any mention to changes to Orbs of Light, right? Orbs of Light presumably are going to still give roughly the same benefit, right? Maybe at a reduced cost, even if it is at a reduced cost, right? Like what we're gonna get from Orbs of Light, Well of Radiance is still, just by the fact that it's going to give 3 Orbs of Light every single time, and it's going to come up first, is going to foist this so high into the meta. I'm calling it right now. It's going to foist this so high into the meta that you are going to get annoyed at seeing Well of Radiance spams. Any thoughts from either of you two?
We need to figure out how to kill it now.
Well, ladies and gentle guardians, Blade Barrage is a tier 4 super in terms of its speed and sort of its cooldown. We might start seeing counter picks to Blade Barrage to try to counter Well of Radiance coming up. Like, that might be the world we live in right now. We might live in a world where people intentionally pick Blade Barrage specifically to counter Well of Radiance coming up so fast.
Yeah.
Like that's wild to me.
I think that what this really means is, I think it's meaningful change.
Yeah, sure. That's for sure. Yeah. I am worried that with all abilities across the board being turned down, that we're going to see the rise of the already dominant movement exotics, such as the Dune Marchers, the Stompies, the Transversive Steps, that kind of thing. Those neutral exotics that don't require an ability to be good, we're going to see those come even more dominant because everything else is getting pushed back a bit. You know, right? Like, I'm worried the Pumpkin Spice Boots are just going to be like the auto pick. Like, that's like, of course, why wouldn't you run Stompies? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think those are supposed to get a rework sometime soon, or at least that's what people have been saying.
They mentioned Dune Marcher specifically, but
well, Dune Marcher is outrageously.
Wait a minute, you mean a 15 meter or 20 meter hit everybody with like what? How much damage?
50 damage, but sometimes it procs twice for some reason.
Good lord.
Yeah. I don't know. We have to wait for another TWAB.
Yeah, the armor TWAB.
The groundwork right now.
Yeah,
the armor
that's the
TWAB
thing.
is going to be real interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing with all of these. We're getting to see a glimpse. So the thought of like taking the grenades, for example, are other bolt grenades going to follow suit with firebolt grenade? Is the arc bolt grenade going to have less damage and it's going to do, it's going to be up a little bit faster? Are solar the fusion grenades, are those going to be a one shot just as well as the flux grenades? What about the more traditional style grenades like flashbang, suppression grenade, incendiary grenade, right? Like what's going to happen? We're not sure. There's still a lot of things we have to speculate on. I'm sure that Bungie's going to keep it roughly consistent. So again, talking about those bolt type grenades, I'm sure we're going to see, generally speaking, those type of grenades are generally going to be faster, right? Maybe I could be wrong on that, but also like I mentioned, there's a big missing section of the armor is so incredibly intertwined with abilities that without having the armor TWAB with this abilities TWAB, we're missing most of the picture, right? But we can only speculate. I've got some things I want to talk about. I took the time and actually set aside and talked about all of the armor pieces that didn't get mentioned that are like ability spam related exotics, right? That could be dangerous coming to this next patch. And I want to point out some stuff that didn't get mentioned for like how abilities are going to be unaffected more or less by these changes. So I'm going to start with the weapons. Easy one, Monte Carlo. Hopefully I don't need to explain why. Bad Juju, a bit of a niche pick, but hopefully I don't need to explain why. Thorn, with specifically Necrotic Grips, is a melee regenerator on Warlock, so, you know, you got that. And Powered Damage with Lumina works for a handful of different exotics on Warlock again, so another interesting thing there. Rat King specifically with any type of invisibility build on Hunters. You've got the two primary stasis-related weapons. You've got the Agar Scepter and you've got the Cryosthesia, which both can play into your stasis build already, right? So we're seeing weapons already have some viability for possible build crafting to work around some of these changes. I'm going to talk about Warlock here, and I want any of you to jump in here if you've got a particular idea. Now, I'm going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel with this, as hopefully this first one will be very obvious, but these are some things to keep in mind. Apotheosis Veil, the Nezarec Sin, Eye of Another World. Cranky, you were talking about this, Verity's Brow, the Dawn Chorus, the Skull of Diarachum Kara is that helmet I couldn't remember earlier. I mentioned already the Necrotic Grips, Sunbracers. Here's an interesting one. Getaway Artist. We forget that Getaway Artist gives ability energy back when it gets hits. This is one that I think is going to go under the radar for a lot of people. Aeon Souls, or Aeon Swift, or Aeon whatever it's called. The Aeon Exotics, if you run the Sect of Vigor, I believe it is. Whenever a ally dies anywhere on the map, you get class ability energy back, which can feed through your bonds with those ability regenerator stuff like Bomber, Outreach, Perpetuation, that kind of thing, can feed into those abilities. I think that's going to go under the radar, so keep an eye on that one.
Bungie finally found a way to make those things relevant. They just
right?
hire sandbox to make it happen.
Yeah, man, it took forever. Now, if only we can get Skyburners to be relevant. Vesper of Radius, I did say we're going to scrape the bottom of the barrel. Phoenix Protocol, and a super regenerator. Starfire Protocol, you get double fusion grenades, and you get grenades back when you get empowered rift, or empowered damage just generically. And presumably the solar grenades, these fusion grenades, are going to be a one-shot like Flux Grenade, which means that having two of those is going to be very, very annoying to deal with. I can already see people running this if this doesn't get a specific adjustment. Mantle of Battle Harmony is essentially Thresh, which Thresh is going to be its own meta definer. I think we're going to see a lot more Thresh-related weapons. Boots of the Assembler allows you to keep your Rift up more often, which inherently means that you're going to have more Rift uptime. Prometheum Spurs are another Rift regenerator. So that's just Warlock. Shall I keep going? Let's jump into Hunter. Any thoughts on any of those already? Anything before I roll on here?
That's a lot. That's a lot.
There's a lot of things that aren't mentioned in that TWAB, which again, like Armor TWAB, I hope address a lot of these.
Yeah.
All right, moving into Hunter. Graviton Forfeit. We talked about that as an option for specifically like Rat King, is you can get your melee back when you're invisible. That's what it does. It gives you stats in general. So, you know, that there's a lot of ways you can work into that, especially Void 2.0 coming out, or 3.0.
That's my exotic right there. I crafted one of my first builds with right around that, and that class that I used is getting a nice little buff as well. Yep.
It is worth pointing out that a lot of the changes to mods specifically, so that is something to talk about here before I roll on with the Hunter stuff. Long live dexterity. Rest in pieces all of the kickstart and focusing and ability regenerating armor mods for your gauntlets. Dexterity is now king. Like, if there's less of a reason to use them, as they're now 50% less effective. And if you ever needed an excuse to use dexterity before, there's your excuse. You know, like, I don't know how to feel about that one, but
Shoddy dexterity is coming in.
Yeah. Let's roll forward here. So we mentioned Shards of Galanor. This is one that I think people are still sleeping on to this day. Young Occam Kara's Spine. That's the one that gives you the powerful trip mine.
I hate that one.
You might notice that
So
I'm not mentioning any exotics here that spike the power more. So I'll throw out as an example too that Arthur's Embrace, just like things that make an ability better, right? I'm just talking about exotics that give you the ability uptime a little bit more, right? Anyway, Omnioculus. The Lucky Raspberry. I did say we're going to scrape the bottom. They're scraping the bottom. Lucky Raspberry has hardly ever, if it has ever, seen serious play. You know, maybe having a lot of arc web grenades, or whatever they're called, arc bolt grenades, might be kind of crazy. Here's another one.
Yeah, true.
Radiant dance machines. Previously, we thought about that as getting a lot of super energy back, but now imagine you're in a world where you've got a one-shot grenade on a 3-minute cooldown, but you have double bomber on your hunter cloak, right? Whenever you dodge, you get a bit of that energy back. Radiant dance machine your way to a 30-second a 30-second flux grenade. You see what I'm going with here?
Oh yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Something we never see in PvP, Star Eater scales. With the lower uptime of supers, we might see people like run these until they get their super and then swap to something more powerful, like Shards of Galanor or something, to get it up more often. Titans, you're up next. My baby, Kepri's Horn. You get more barricade energy whenever you get solar kills. I mentioned this already. The Mask of the Quiet One, something that I'm surprised didn't get mentioned. Insurmountable Skull Fort. We'll talk about Shoulder Charge later, but Insurmountable Skull Fort didn't get a change. Mention the Aeon Exotics again. This one is particularly scary. No backup plans, as whenever you get shotgun kills, you get melee energy. MK44 Stand-Asides. You get half of your ability energy back if you're able to get a kill with a Shoulder Charge. Shoulder Charge are going to be a lot more difficult to get kills with, but it's still an option. A Shoulder Charge is going to be more of a movement option from here on out. But yeah, Titans not so much. Titans tend to focus on spiking power rather than getting consistency on power. You notice I also didn't mention anything that gives you double of anything, because that's obviously going to be directly impacted by their overall reduced everything. This one I saw a lot of PvE players upset at. The dodges are now getting changed, and they obviously they're not going to break the projectile tracking. Presumably they're still going to break aim assist, because they didn't mention that. We could get an update from like DMG on Twitter later. But the big thing here is that their cooldown is now being increased by 3 to 5 seconds, or excuse me, 3 to 7 seconds, depending on what you're doing. Frankly, I don't see 3 seconds as being impactful. I don't know a single hunter that's not running at least 7 mobility, right? So I don't think this is going to affect a lot of people. Like, they're just going to see a little bit less uptime on that dodge, which in my opinion, dodge was one of the strongest class abilities, if not the strongest class ability in the game, because of its frequency, right? And you can use that frequency to, like I mentioned, like double bomber, like you can have abilities up more often just because you're using it more. I mean, like I'm not one to point the finger. I've got a hunter that relies on the class ability, right? Like, I'm right there with it. Across the board, we're seeing these underused aspects get more slots. Warlock previously had the best access to a lot of slots, so a lot of different fragments. Now we're seeing things like Grim Harvest and the Diamond Lance, which I know you guys have to get online just to even see what that is. Actually get a lot of slots. Diamond Lance, one thing here I want to throw out, we're almost here towards the end. Diamond Lance is a little bit scary now, as it not only has increased slots, but there's also a lot more ways to proc it. The ability to get a Diamond Lance up with 3 kills from a stasis weapon. Diamond Lance is right now almost a guaranteed kill, similar to how like a Shadebinder, Penumbral Blast, that melee, right, is kind of it's basically a one-shot kill. Like, if you can land it,
is it basically an ice version of like the Valkyrie spear we had in the
like, you don't even know what it is, right? That's how bad it was.
Yeah, okay.
This one I'm not a fan of. Shoulder Charge and Handheld Supernova are no longer a one-shot ability. Now, they said that they're going to make this a lot easier to land for Shoulder Charge specifically, and it's going to be kind of more of a movement-based thing, so all right, I guess I'm okay with that. But Shoulder Charge already was getting just hard shut down by shotguns. I'm really curious to see if this is going to, and the base cooldown is now up to 90 seconds. It's like an extra 8 seconds. So it's very clear they're making very intentional changes to make sure that this isn't a thing anymore, right?
Rest in peace, I shoulder charge you.
Yeah, like certain builds are just like the insurmountable scroll fort in like always up shoulder charge build is just gone. Like that's just not going to happen. Like I just don't think you're going to see that anymore. Bottom tree striker got hit hard.
Oh my god, it's about to
it's pretty strong.
It was pretty strong. Yeah, it got hit hella hard, kicked right in the nuts. I think you're going to see a lot more people drop out of that, but some melee based builds might come up. Warlocks can finally win in slap fights, which personally I'm not a fan of. I liked my increased range personally, but
too.
I like it too.
Yeah, that's an interesting change, but I see a lot of people talk very positively about that. If you're a Warlock, let us know if you prefer one or the other. Handheld Supernova can no longer one-shot, which but it does push people back, which is funny.
It does do that.
And I'm wondering, somebody threw out a good idea. I wonder if you will be able to self-push yourself back and rocket jump. That would be kind of cool. If I could like rocket jump, yeah, and then blink into somebody. Oh, man. Winter's Wrath. Neon, you are a Winter's Wrath main. How does it feel to have your super dropped from S tier to probably a solid B tier?
I'm upset, but you know what? I had it coming. This thing is way too good. It's so annoying to fight. Like, I love using it, but when I go against it, man, I hate myself. I mean, but the changes are good, though. They're not, like, making it completely trash. They're just putting it more in line with the rest of the shutdown supers.
Yeah, because it was a roaming shutdown super, right? And now it's, like, just a roaming super, which I think is completely fair. Bleak Watcher's getting a nerf, too. Can't say I saw that one coming, as it's not going to be up as often, presumably. But
is it just PvP?
That's both of them.
Oh.
Yeah, they should have done it for just PvP. It was like a godsend in PvE.
Right?
Maybe that means it needed to be nerfed. Well, thank you everybody who watched up to this point. I know this is a bit of a longer video, but hopefully this was informative. Hopefully you can share some of these ideas and get a better understanding of what it is you can look forward to for this next upcoming season, this next upcoming patch, I should say, and maybe get a better beat on the meta before it happens and get ahead of the curve just a little bit. You guys know the outro line?
Bless your faces.
What?
Okay, thanks, Neon. Deuces.